All right, Matt, we are in Chicago. We're in the Windy City. I know you had a chance to visit my hometown. And first of all, these were some huge protests. Now, it didn't get violent, but look, I'm going to be playing this video so that YouTube can understand it. Unfortunately, there was an incident where a car did drive through some of the protesters. Now, I was trying my very best, and I failed miserably at trying to set up a live stream. I think Daniel and myself, we've done our fair share of coverage in downtown Chicago doing live streams. We were lacking the technology and gear at the time to really set things up. But, even then we were able to get a signal, but it seemed like some people were having a hard time getting signals. Other people had a little bit more tech and gear. Hey, it is what it is when it comes down to independent media. But, I am worried on how this will all play out on the 14th, because yes, there is going to be a No Kings protest on June 14th. I stuttered there. Sorry. So let's go ahead and play. This is from ABC7, a local Chicago news network.
A short time ago, we're standing here near Wabash and Monroe, and that's when a driver sped through the crowd as they were marching through the downtown streets. We do have video of what we just witnessed just a few minutes ago. Again, this happened at Monroe and Wabash during this protest of anti-ICE protesters. You can see this sea of protesters, about 1,000 people partying as that burgundy vehicle sped through the crowd. A few seconds later, we saw Chicago police giving a thumbs up, seemingly saying that no one was injured, but we're still, of course, reaching out to Chicago police about their search for that person. Again, we did see a burgundy vehicle with what looked to be a woman driving that vehicle through the crowd. No one seemed to have been hurt. But again, this crowd continues to grow here. We're seeing at least 1,000 or more anti-ICE protesters gathering, many of them in solidarity with the unrest seen in Los Angeles, as well as responding to the ICE arrest that happened last week at an ICE facility in the South Loop. Again, this is still growing. We're having multiple organizations gathering here, organizers telling us they will continue to speak out against what they're calling unjust immigration enforcement.
I want to play another segment of this right here. This is, again, a bird's eye view of the same vehicle doing this. Now, thankfully, it looked like nobody got hurt. But this is the problem that I've seen with protests throughout this time here, especially covering, the first term for Trump's administration. I know emotions are high, especially how people felt how November 5th turned out in regards to Trump getting reelected. And I understand that people are upset about Trump, using ICE to round up immigrants and migrants and all of that nature. But this was a campaign promise that Trump did run on. No one should be surprised that Trump was going to be following through on this. The concern is that with emotions running high, I know everyone's going to be talking about infiltrators, but this is something for both sides, because I understand there's going to be counter protests, and I understand people just want to go to war with each other and attack each other and attack and attack and attack. Beware of these unhinged people that think that they're going to be a hero. Hurting somebody at a protest, and I get it. Protests at this point, I don't know how effective they are as a tool, but I know in Chicago, a city that has a long sad history of racism and hyper-segregation. And I'm going to say that again, hyper-segregation. It's enough to make the Jim Crow laws back in the day, say like, hey, Chicago, you're a northern city. You're going a little bit too far. Even Dr. King was surprised at the amount of racism here in the city of Chicago, because Chicago's got some problems. And what I'm worried about, especially what's going to happen on the 14th, is high emotions. I know that obviously, if not one crowd, but a couple of crowds are going to protest in front of Trump Tower. And this is a recipe for disaster. And the only thing that could probably be the caveat to save Chicago right now is if, one, the protesters are allowed, there's a lot of security. That means sheep pens, all right? Big cages to make sure everyone's safe. But also, number two, that it goes off without a hitch, and that Brandon Johnson doesn't make the mistakes that Lori Lightfoot did, because Brandon Johnson most likely will be a one-term mayor. Because, if he does it even further, if he does what Lightfoot did, then he will end up like her. Now, I know that you might have a couple of questions about this, Matt, because I could elaborate a little bit more into it. But looking at Chicago politics and Mayor Brandon Johnson and this city, and how Chicago has also drawn ire from Trump, there's some stuff that could happen here in this city, hypothetically, that could lead to, again, what, National Guard being deployed here? I mean, it happened under Lightfoot. And so the answer is yes. So there's a lot of factors to weigh in here, and whether or not it is in the best interest of the Democrats running Chicago to really make sure things are safe here, because Chicago is a name that is on Trump's hit list politically because it has challenged him before, especially under then Rahm Emanuel, Lightfoot, and now Brandon Johnson. And Pritzker himself has also had some choice words for the Trump administration. So that's what's going to be happening here. We got a couple other articles and videos to share, but Matt, I'm pretty sure you got some commentary because again, I tried to get some lives. I failed. So folks, so there you go. But I'll see what I could do on Saturday. No promises being kept, but also let's keep our heads on a swivel here.
No. So when you're a one-man operation, sometimes I feel like, we missed out on filming so many things. I was like, oh my God, we just couldn't, because there's the technical elements, like you said, this, the service element, and just all these different distractions. We do our best. So, but one thing I did catch on film here in LA was the cops running over protesters. That happened. They actually ran over them. Nobody's reporting on it. We got it on camera. I haven't been able to get it out there just yet because I've got so much footage to go through. But look, I'll say this. I think we said on the earlier segment that, the LA, this is the LA protest / riot / infiltration / escalation is the blueprint for what's going to happen in the rest of the country. And we're seeing Chicago is absolutely heading that direction. And I do think that the news about our mayor, Karen Bass, implementing the curfew is a direct message to Chicago to let Chicago know here's what's coming. And that's why we have to kind of do the curfew now and set that precedent, because that is the next step for Chicago. I absolutely think there's going to be military presence there very soon. This is just getting started, kids. So yeah, we need to meet with our teams and figure out the best way we can go about covering this and staying safe in the process. But that's what we're going to see next in Chicago. Absolutely. And I do want to hear more about what you're seeing so far. And but I'll anticipate and I'll tell viewers now, that's where we're headed. Chicago, Atlanta, San Francisco, New York. We're going to see it everywhere.
So, I had a couple people reach out to me and say, hey, what's going to happen in Chicago? So here's two scenarios that will play out if it does. If Brandon Johnson has the protests end up like how Lightfoot handled it, the bridges going up, stores being ransacked, no accountability, no nothing. And again, look, I understand emotions are high. During the COVID lockdowns and under Lightfoot, downtown Chicago suffered horribly. I spoke about this on No Soundbites and even on Larry Sharp's show as well. Okay, so again, No Soundbites, Republican commentator, Larry Sharp, Libertarian commentator, but there's no sugarcoating it. Downtown Chicago is not the downtown Chicago I remember as a kid with my grandfather and my mother back in the day. And even then, I'm being generous here, even in 2019, hustling and bustling. Under Lightfoot's administration, especially in how she responded to the Black Lives Matter protests and numerous other things, economically, downtown Chicago suffered. And that what caused that is one of the main causes for her not to be mayor. Brandon Johnson ran as a progressive. Didn't follow through with any of his promises. All right. And if he did, they were mediocre at best. And I'm being generous here, folks. If you think Chicago's a communist, socialist, Marxist, Leninist utopia, you are gravely mistaken. And please remove those words from your lexicon. Okay. It's not true at all. So if that happens, if that scenario happens, Brandon Johnson will be a one-term mayor. And dare I say it, Chicago might not ever recover. And I love this city. This city has some problems. All right. I know it's got some problems. Okay. It's got its problems. Another scenario doesn't help as much is if there's tightened security, but then this kind of leads up to a conversation I had with Daniel a long time ago. And that is, hey, Dan, we're no longer covering these protests in front of Trump Tower because you're seeing people being herded into cages. Security, okay, but the cost is, okay, are the leaders just leading people just to protest and yell at Trump Tower, which isn't a government building? I mean, what's going to happen here? Because emotions are high. And what happened in February when you had Dr. Phil here saying, how do you know me? Rounding up immigrants here in February in Chicago, there's a difference between cold February and warm June. So people are going to be out there in mass. People are seeing what's happening in your city in LA. and emotions are going to be at an all-time high. Plus, it's Trump's birthday, no King's March. It's a whole recipe for a massive turnout. And Chicago could be a hotbed of a lot of protests and anger. And one wrong move by somebody who's unhinged or a move by somebody who's an infiltrator could lead to an epic disaster to where we're having more lockdowns. And politically, it could shake up the entire Chicago system. Now, what do I mean by this? Because I want to give the floor back to you because I'm pontificating here, and I'm sorry about that. But it's just, in fact, you were there with the interview. I forgot. So we had Flip Chicago Red. What is Flip Chicago Red? Well, that's the group that turned 2 voting districts in the city of Chicago red. Now, listen, if my grandpa was still alive, my uncle was still alive, my grandma was still alive, they'd be like, how'd that happen? Because that doesn't happen. And they weren't even associated with the GOP. Check out that interview that we did. Now, that could have a lot of consequences. How this protest plays out could have a lot of consequences for 2027 and overall who will be the next mayor and overall how the city council will be made up. Could we witness a rise of maybe third parties or Republican candidates in City Hall? Not so much in mayor, maybe theoretically. But remember, the Democrat machine just doesn't give up everything so easily. This is the Chicago Democrat machine. So to everyone who's talking, oh, is it a communist machine? Oh, no. But you'll pray that it was, because it's a corporatist machine that likes to hum along. But it is struggling. So, Matt, I want to give the floor to you, man.
Yeah, no, I'm glad you reminded me about that interview. We should have given her a little more credit for understanding that you can get people to switch sides before you can get them to disconnect from the entire system. And it sounds like what they're proving in Chicago. I wish there was a way we can motivate people or educate them more on what the protesting and what the challenging of this oligarchy, what it actually should be about. When we're talking about immigration, we're talking about protecting people and their rights to, have healthy, happy lives, people that are non-offenders that have no criminal record. That's what a lot of this is about, right? It's protecting people that have come here. But how do we handle the border? How does what we're doing here in LA, people are coming out to protest against ICE and these raids that are happening in elementary schools all over, like just random raids going on. People are scared to death. I think that we got to start sending a different message about how do we handle immigration? What is the message we want to send? And I think that to connect all the dots here, Kit, and I know that Chicago group that is turning turn Chicago red. They're not going to hear this because we tried with them. But hopefully people out there can hear this.
I think they kind of heard a little bit.
Not the part. No, listen. The part about disconnecting from the empire, the American imperialist machine. So we have to talk about imperialism. They didn't want to talk about it. She didn't want to talk about imperialism with us. She said, I don't care about the wars and the genocides and all. That's not what we're talking about. It's like, well, Martin Luther King cared about that. He was doing civil rights. He was challenging what's on the ground. And he was saying, you know what? We need to look at our military problem. That's what's creating the immigration problem. Nobody talks about that. Nobody talks about when we conduct empire military operations, we destroy other countries, we create refugees, we create a crisis where people need to find a place to go. And if we don't talk about that, then what are we saying? We're not going to the heart of the problem. That is the problem. People don't understand how do we solve this issue. You stop invading and occupying and stealing resources and conducting coups and destroying people's lives and sanctioning and completely economically and physically destroying people's lives outside of our empire. That's what we need to look at. And if we could get everybody aligned with that message, then you have something. Then you have something really good to get behind. And it's about fighting the oligarchy, not let's change everyone from blue to red. It's going to be the same thing again.
Absolutely. And so looking more into this again, this happened yesterday again. Thousands of people did march downtown on Tuesday against the federal immigration raids in Chicago and happening all wide. And of course, it started somewhere. It's either going to start in Federal Plaza or somewhere in Grant Park. And so everyone is just going to be seeing an unending sea of protesters, and it's going to happen. Now, I want everyone to know that all these problems with ICE was happening long before Trump got into office. Same thing for Biden. It was happening under Biden, happened under Trump's first term, and happened under Barack Obama. And we have to remember why there is a migrant crisis, because of previous interventions, previous wars in Central and South America, the war on drugs. And look, adding a human element here. If I was in a war zone, or if I was in an area controlled by a cartel, I would figure out my escape plan and try and run away. Now, I won't sit here and pretend to be a tough guy, because I'll probably die, halfway along the journey, and I'm being generous as that. But a rational person with a family, or by themselves, or with relatives, are going to want to think like, I want to get out of here, and I want to get out of here quick. Now, this all stems from failed policies decades before all of us, right? And so this is what's causing the immigrant crisis. This is what's causing a lot of issues at hand here. And of course, when you have the sanctuary cities that, in my opinion, were handled terribly, you have a system now in which you have people hating each other for stuff that is understandably out of their control. All right. And I really felt like the sanctuary city programs that were trying to be done were nothing but feel good points for a lot of people during Trump's first term. And look, to a lot of people who did that arduous march, I am so sorry that you had to go through that. But now people are being used as pawns to hate each other. And while these protests will be taking place on the 14th and everywhere else, you got to remember, this is all part of a plan for surveillance. This is all part of a plan for you to hate your neighbor. But for my fellow Chicagoans, this is our city. And this isn't a call for everyone be polite, but this is our city. And this city's been hit hard with the aftermath of Lightfoot, Emmanuel, the lockdowns, the economic tag that's here. It's expensive to live in this city. The only ones that are going to fix Chicago is us Chicagoans. Now, I remember this city being a masterclass of commerce, of community. And maybe I'm just putting on my rose-colored glasses, but we cannot give any politician, Democrat or Republican, the excuse to step on us further. So at least here in Chicago, let's set a standard of who we are. And you have the right for free speech and the right to assemble. Even counter-protesters do too. But that means also policing your own and being careful of what is happening. Know your surroundings. Keep your heads on a swivel, because the real fight isn't against each other. The real fight is against us losing our freedoms. And who's in control of that? The rulers. Matt, I want to give the floor to you, man.
So you mentioned the ICE situation being an issue the whole way. Trump is not unique to this. In the last week or two, perhaps the escalation, and again, we talk about theatrics of that and the shock and awe, and it is real. And I will say it again, it's real when you get your classroom invaded by ICE and people are getting picked away from their families. Like, that's real. But if you look at the budget, the media wasn't scaring us when Obama was adding $500 million to the ICE budget alone every year of his presidency. Guess who else did that? Biden. Guess who else did that? Trump. If you actually look at the graph from the last 8 years, 10 years, 12 years, it's been a $500 million increase on ICE budgeting every single year. The same exact, like the graph goes up very consistently till right now, till 2025. So again, the funding of the military, the funding of the police, it's equal on both sides. It should be the one giveaway. If there's a tipping point for people who still are holding on to the idea that the Democrats are trying to help the people and the Republicans hate the people and they're just uniquely racist against Democrats, if people still holding on to that for one last sliver of hope that theory is true, which it's not, this hopefully is their breaking point. The tipping point is, look at the numbers of military spending of even though Trump ran on, I'm going to lower the military budget, the big beautiful bill as it is.
Big, beautiful, huge.
Huge, more military, more spending. The same with every single administration, every single time. It doesn't change. More Capitol Police budget from Democrats, right? More the defund the police. Are you kidding? It was fund the police. More cops, more military. more everything,
Mhm.
more ICE. So the ICE thing, we should have, I mean, if it's about the principle, we should have been in the streets about ICE the entire last decade. But I get
Precisely.
it. It's now that the media is telling you now's the time to get afraid. So yes,
Precisely.
be afraid of an ICE raid at your classroom if you're in school right now. But like
Mhm.
understand that this is a larger problem than Trump is uniquely
Right
racist.
on.
They're all racist. Biden and the crime bill. Are you kidding me? Like no one talks about
Right
that.
on.
So like let's just keep a perspective, step out of the whole thing, and understand that we have to come together as a real populist movement against the entire system.
Absolutely. And so what's going to happen in Chicago? Well, I am going to do everything in my power to report what's going on. I'm going to be very careful. I'm going to make sure that I have a little fancy disguise on so no one knows who I am. So, but there you go. Maybe I shouldn't tell them I'm going to be wearing a disguise. But look, my goal is to cover the news. My goal is to do news journalism and commentary. And this is happening in my hometown. I love this city. And, this is going to be a newsworthy event. So, to my friends and allies, and even those who don't like, or who don't politically align with me, if you're covering this, be safe. My Chicagoans, let's be safe out there too, shall we? I think so.